Well, just like that, I think we are live, sir. I think we are good. It is time to get after the Husker Online Monday Rundown. Hey, Sean, I got to tell you before we start, and by the way, that is the great Sean Callahan, owner, administrator, founder, god of Husker Online. Can I do this show with you one time when somebody's not being fired?
Yeah. I mean, let me tell you, Jeff, the last 2 Sundays have been like leave church, go to the office, and get home at like 9 or 10. I mean, they have been, it's been 2 long days on Sundays here, and hopefully we'll see some normalcy here for at least the next 2 months. But we know that's going to be short lived because they still got to name a new coach. And we know there's going to be massive roster, maybe attrition, additions. I mean, we're just in chapter 2 right now. Probably chapter 1 was Scott Frost, chapter 2, Eric Chenander. We're not even anywhere close to being done with all of the things that could happen here the rest of the way.
Yeah, I did a college football wrap-up show for On3 yesterday morning, and we did the Nebraska-Oklahoma game. And right off the bat, one of your guys, here I am thinking, man, poor Washington's got to come on here, and we got to talk about that game right afterwards. But I thought at the same time, if you're a Nebraska fan and you haven't logged on to Husker Online in a while, you need to get after it. It's $1 for the year right now. You're about to watch an incredible coaching search. We're going to see a transformation at Nebraska. Hey, nobody wanted it this way, but this is the way it is. And so now is the time where you're going to want to pay attention on a daily basis, hell, on an hourly basis these days, it seems like, Sean, to what's happening with Nebraska football. 1 year of coverage, $10 total. Husker Online, make it happen. We will be doing this show together every Monday. I'll be here with Sean Callahan. Of course, Sip is going to join us here momentarily, I should say. I know that you have other guests planned tonight. Sean, tell everybody who's coming up tonight, and we'll have an opportunity to talk with them as well.
Yeah, we'll have Stephen Sipple, obviously 7:10, 7:20, going to come on just for 10 minutes. He had 2 great conversations today, and this is the power of Sipple. He talked to Barry Alvarez and the head coach of Utah, Kyle Whittingham, on this phone. So just a normal day for Steve Sipple. And what they talked about was Bill Busch. Bill Busch is stepping in now as the new interim defensive coordinator. Bill Busch worked for Barry Alvarez, and he worked for Kyle Whittingham. So we're going to kind of turn the page a little bit and go on to some of that stuff. We really hit it hard yesterday. I mean, our live show yesterday had 1,900 live viewers at one point on Eric Chenander's firing. Then Kyle Kollmorgen, who also hosts his own podcast, former Huskers starting offensive lineman on the 2001 Rose Bowl team, will join us. Kyle's got great opinions, great takes. He's very unfiltered. He knows a lot of the coaches on this coaching staff, and he understands the game. So Kyle will join us with some great insight. And then Andy Kendeigh, my colleague from Channel 7, ABC in Omaha. He's a Wisconsin Badger, by the way, but he's married to a Nebraska. He's been in Nebraska for a long time. We've worked together on TV since 2011 and have traveled to every road game since and home game, obviously. So Andy will come on with us as well. And Jim Rose will be back next week. I had a great talk with Jim. And he's like, I want to come back. I'm like, we'll get you on next week because we got a lot of Jim Rose brought the heat, and a lot of people liked what he brought last week on the show as well.
Yeah, I thought it was tremendous, and I'm having a blast doing this show with you guys. It's keen insight. It's important. There's a lot of stuff we're learning as we go along. Your connections over the years with these guys and their insights coupled with yours, Sean. Obviously, if you're a Nebraska fan, this is the stuff that you're watching closely because at some point, obviously, this thing will shift, and the roots of that change are starting right now. It's a transformation, to be sure. It's got to be frustrating. Everybody knows that, but everybody does have an opinion on what's going on, but your guys is an informed opinion as you guys are there on the ground on a daily basis talking to coaches and players and people in the business about what comes next for Nebraska. It's interesting, Sean, I catch you now in a bye week for Nebraska. I wonder, I felt bad for Mickey. What a tough way to debut. I wonder how much can change. I want your opinion, Sean. How much can change in the course of this season? Obviously, there's a lot of changes with personnel with the coaching staff, but you also got to wonder what can they do with the player personnel. I don't know. I know that there's going to be a long look at each of these practices about who takes the field on Saturdays.
Yeah, to use an overused cliche, they could change the X's and O's, but it's still the same Jimmy and Joes. And can you make those Jimmy and Joes better by tinkering. And I think that is the challenge. And, Mickey Joseph's got a pretty good defensive resource at his hands. His brother, Vance Joseph, is the current defensive coordinator of the Arizona Cardinals, former Denver Broncos head coach. So he's got people within his own family that I'm sure are advising him and talking to him about things. And there's some ideas, I'm sure, but can you fix these issues? They've got major issues at the linebacker spot, the safety spot, the pass rush is not getting home, tackling issues. Are those correctable over a bye week where, they can only practice, Jeff, 2 times this week? When you in Florida State, where you're at down there in Tallahassee, they're in the same boat. If you play week 0, you get 2 byes. You don't get an extra week of practice because you start the season a week earlier. You then have to divide up those 2 bye weeks, and you could either start a week earlier or later. But now Nebraska started early like everybody else would. So they have to divide 5 practices out over 2 bye weeks. So they are only going to practice Tuesday, Thursday. They did running, lifting, meetings today. But yeah, it's a limited schedule only because of the rules of the bye week.
I asked this last week, Sean, and I wonder, of the elements that are most surprising about what's happening at Nebraska right now, would you say that players, in terms of what was brought in, we talked a lot about transfer portal guys and a lot about how Nebraska was attempting to revamp on the fly. Are you surprised at the ineffectiveness of those players? Is that the biggest shock on the season?
Yeah, I mean, on offense, I feel like they've gotten some bang from the transfer guys. The receivers, Casey Thompson, Anthony Grant is not a transfer portal guy, but he basically is. He's a JUCO guy that was at Florida State at one point in his career, and he's done really well. But yeah, defense, they had major issues up front, and they lost a lot of guys that were 6-year seniors, 5th-year seniors. Then at the end of the spring, they lost another wave of players, or right around that time. Jordan Riley left, and then a guy named Casey Rogers left. They followed the defensive line coach to Oregon, and they can replace these guys. They'll get guys from the portal, but we're learning they just don't have enough, physicality up front to win, get off blocks. Then they're missing tackles on the back end. So it's been just a collective mess across the board. And I think, sure, scheme is an issue, but I think honestly, the talent, I don't know if they have, the elite level guys, and even the guys they added like O'Shawn Mathis have not been able to really make a difference at the level. I mean, considering this, O'Shawn Mathis was the number 1 ranked player in the transfer portal, according to the Athletic in the, after in the spring period. So that guy was all Big 12, and he's had minimal impact. Garrett Nelson, who's a captain, has had, limited impact. He's had a few plays where he's gotten home and it's caused turnovers, but they just haven't had enough with those key guys up front. Ty Robinson, a former 4-star guy from Arizona, he turned down Alabama and USC to go to Nebraska. He has not been an impact guy up front, and they don't have depth behind there. I mean, the guys behind there, the cupboard was pretty bare. The former D-line coach they didn't recruit a lot of great players, especially over the pandemic period, and they didn't develop very many of those guys. And I think that's showing up now. They just don't have the horses on the defensive line. And then obviously in the secondary, they lost some key guys, 3 of their 4 starters, and they've had issues back there too.
Yeah, I should have specified. I was mainly talking about the defense. I'm glad you illuminated that. Yeah, there's been plenty of production with some of the offensive players that transferred in, but defensively, it has been a problem. I wonder now, too, whenever you're going through a situation like this where the losses have mounted, obviously coaches have been dismissed, you wonder the mentality of the players at this point. All these guys want to win. All these players want to win. All these players care deeply. But when things start to spiral south, you sometimes wonder if the intensity and the focus will be there. What has the reaction been over these last 10 days?
Yeah, I think it's kind of shell shock, but I think it really started in Ireland. There was no way anybody expected. Losing to Northwestern is always a possibility. They were 2 touchdown favorite, though. But not only to lose, but to kind of get gashed by what, at least what on paper, was maybe the worst offense in the Big Ten. I mean, that was red flag number 1. I thought red flag number 2 was North Dakota putting together a 16-play scoring drive right before halftime. So I think there were a number of things that kind of led to these issues. But that game, to me, the opening game of the year, really kind of started things. And then, everything from there kind of went, Georgia Southern, the bottom just came out. I mean, to see Georgia Southern come in and put up that kind of yardage on Nebraska under a first-year head coach, that was a real issue.
The rumors will begin to swirl, and this is where it gets fun. We talk about a coaching search. Again, you've seen the special here tonight. This will be going on for a while. We don't know how long, so I think you want to react to this as soon as possible. You get our coaching special today, $10 for a whole year, and you'll watch as the names trickle in. I already know from afar the names are out there, Sean, bantied about on a daily basis. You guys get to vet what's real and what's not. What do you think the timeline is? Is it the rest of the season? Basically, we know Trev has given himself a lot of time here because you can't rush this decision. You got to find the right guy.
Yeah, I think it has to be. I mean, the rest of the season. I mean, they have time on their hands, and they've got to take advantage of that. I mean, to me, there is no rush with this right now. I mean, they have another 10, 11 weeks to figure this out. I mean, they play all the way to Black Friday, and I'm not saying they're not. As of now, it doesn't look like they're going to qualify for a bowl. So they'll be done Thanksgiving weekend. And then you kind of have that whole week to sort it out. A lot of the sitting head coaches that you talk to, they're not going to talk to you anyway until after then. So, it's just like a Matt Campbell at Iowa State. He's not going to talk to anybody until Iowa State's done. Lance Leipold, probably the same way. I mean, anybody that's currently coaching, that is the process. So you've got to kind of play it out that way.
It's going to be interesting. I'll say this, Sean, the more that Kansas wins, the more that name is going to grow louder and louder and louder. And I understand he's won everywhere he's ever been. I watched his offenses at Buffalo thinking that this guy is great, and he's waited his time. He's 58 years old. If you can win in Kansas, you can certainly win in Nebraska. I would imagine that's a name that will grow in stature each week that Kansas matters. They're now ranked.
Well, even, Buffalo. To get Buffalo, I believe they were ranked too at one point in his career. What the job he did there, and then to win at the D3 level national championships, that's true coaching. I mean, D3 is non-scholarship football, and you've got to really build a program to win at that level. And he did. So yeah, he's what he's doing at Kansas, winning at West Virginia, winning at Houston, and now Duke coming in. I mean, College Game Day considered coming to Lawrence, Kansas for the game this weekend for Duke, Kansas, and it wasn't basketball. I mean, think about that.
Yeah. Well, and Sean, it's funny. I cover the ACC throughout as well, and that was talked about today on every show across the conference. We're like, are they really going to have Duke and Kansas play a football game here in September that matters more than their basketball game could? Because these two programs are both undefeated. But yeah, Lance's name is a name that will be omnipresent in this search, no doubt. And there are others, and there is time. Having been a part of a media collection that has had to cover coaches come and go, it can be fun. I mean, we all love college football. Now we have specific teams that we root for and schools that we went to, and we all want our tribe to succeed. But the truth is, everybody's got an opinion about coaching. Everybody's got an opinion about which assistant is valuable or which head coach is a good candidate, is a good fit for here, which guy you would want. We're going to hear Urban Meyer's name a lot. I think last week when we talked, that seemed like a no-go for Nebraska for a variety of reasons. But, fans are going to clamor for that more and more because the guy has won despite the missteps off the field. And then you'll hear probably 4 or 5 other names. It's some tangential link to Nebraska at some point in their careers. So it is kind of fun to cover, and you guys will do it better than anybody on HuskerOnline. So again, $10 for the year. I don't know why you wouldn't do it.
Yeah, it is. It's intriguing because nobody knows where this is going to go. Urban Meyer was in Lincoln with the Fox College pregame show, and I mean he had Larry the Cable Guy come up to him on the live show and said, "I'm here to write you a blank check," and the student section, and Urban Meyer, they've kind of dismissed all of the reports with Nebraska, at least at this point, the Pete Thamels of the world. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's anything there. If Urban Meyer gets back into coaching, who knows where it's going to be, what it's going to be. You're going to get a winner, but there's going to be a lot more that comes with it. And how many people are truly going to want to take all that on? And does he want to take all that on? Because I mean, you saw what it was like in Jacksonville and how bad it got down there for him.
It was ugly.
Where he was hired there as a sure thing, and it went south in a hurry.
Well, and again, we don't want to go down the road of having the larger conversation about Urban Meyer, but the truth is, Trev seemed to really hit on character over and over again. A couple, when he first talked. So, I think there are people that would have questions about that if Urban Meyer's name were there. But again, we look at it. You got the rest of the season. It'll be fun to watch because I think Nebraska is still a very desirable job. This is the larger question that people get in when the power like Nebraska has been down, Sean. People will begin to wonder, obviously, with each passing year, hey, is this something where Nebraska is not the program or not as easy a task to rebuild the program to greatness? Usually with a track record and the kind of cachet that Nebraska has amongst the creme de la creme of college football in the history of the sport, you just need a guy to tap into that and get some momentum early. I felt like when we go back and we look at it, it never really looked like the momentum got going. And at that time, we thought for sure that Scott Frost was a no-brainer. But if you lose a lot of close games early on and don't build momentum and it starts to go south, it is really tough to get the train back on the tracks.
What's amazing, though, still, Jeff, is the stadium remains full. I mean,
of course, yeah.
I think that is the anomaly in all this. There's nowhere else in the world for a team that has not gone to a bowl game since 2016 where you would fill a place with 88,000 fans. This is not a 45,000 seat stadium. This is an 88,000 seat stadium in a state that has a population of 1.9 million people. So there is just this anomaly with Nebraska football that really continues to draw people in. And, I said we're going to have Steve Sipple on. He's having some problems. We're going to let him figure them out.
You got a former player ready to go.
Former player. Let's bring in Kyle Kollmorgen right now. We got Kyle. Where are you at, Kyle? Where are you driving to?
Yeah, right. Well, I'm sitting in a parking lot. My kids at swim team, so I'm sitting out here. Your kids swim, right, Sean?
Are you at Lincoln Northeast?
I'm at Lincoln Northeast right now.
My wife is there right now.
Is she really?
Yeah, she's got Kid and Carly she's at the swim practice there right now too. So if you see my wife, tell her we're busy right now.
All right. I'll let her know. After when I come out here, I try to get a few steps in and get a little cardio. Something anyway.
Well, Kyle, you got Jeff Cameron here as well, our host. And
hey, great.
How you doing, Kyle? Good to see you.
Good to see you, Jeff.
You're hosting a podcast now too, and tell everybody, because you're a fun guy, you're unfiltered, and you launched a podcast. I was one of your early guests on. What is your podcast? Where can we find it?
Okay, so you can find it on Spotify or Apple, really any of the hosts out there. It's called Beyond the Turf, and we've interviewed about 4 or 5 guys. They're getting edited right now. It's pretty raw, pretty unfiltered, Sean, as you know, and we like to have basically athletes, coaches, former coaches on to talk about things that they're not known for, essentially beyond the turf. What's your playlist before you take the field? What's your hobby? What's your charity? What's your scratch? What are you scratching? Golf? Where do you like to golf? What do you like to fish? Where do you like to hunt? It's a blast. We're having a great time. I think we've got about 6 episodes out. We've got 2 interviews out. We've got 4 interviews being edited. So we're having a great time with it. It's a lot of fun.
Well, Kyle, it's been a week, and that's an understatement in Lincoln.
Man, yeah.
You've been around. I mean, you were kind of your final game, and you joke your career was the Orange Bowl to the Rose Bowl, right?
Yeah, we won it in 97, lost it in 01. Yeah, that's exactly right.
You were kind of like the last guy to go through a true traditional, big bowl game every year career at Nebraska. And so you followed the slide the last few years. What did you make out of just the last week and what this program has gone through?
Well, I think, thankfully we never had it. I think in my freshman year, not true freshman year, I think we went 9-4, and you would have thought the wheels were coming off. And back then it wasn't, well, it's only our second loss. Back then it was like Big 12 championship, get in the conversation for the title game, make sure you're playing for the AP title or the coach's title. So we never experienced what these guys have gone through, but unfortunately I've known coaches through a lot of these staffs, and I've known players through a lot of these transitions. And It's hard. It turns into everything is under a microscope, from the coaches' hours to, I mean, the rumor mills get so hot. It's the absolute worst. The rumor mills that start cranking and everybody wants to dance on a grave. And these are family guys, and these players are 17, 18, 19 years old. It's tough. It's tough. Everything's under a microscope. Bye week should help, should allow everyone to get their sea legs, get healthy. It's hard.
What when you look at just the career of Frost here, was there a moment where you kind of said, God, maybe this is not gonna work? When was that moment for you?
I thought when we hired him, I told a lot of people, you got to remember, we hired coach of the year. We hired the guy that everybody wanted to get. We were in a bidding war to get him here. So the naysayers that are coming out 5.5, 6 years later that says, see, I told you, it's like, yeah, you were 1 out of 100 that said it wasn't going to work. I think everybody thought it was going to work. I always thought our coming out party would be this season. I always thought it would be rocky ways. I thought it'd be a hard run. I thought the rebuild project was bigger than most people knew. Our roster when he came in was pretty soft. The Big Ten always schedules hard. The refs always play us hard. And then when he got here, everything that could go wrong did go wrong. From his first game getting rained out to next year's COVID, year 3's COVID. His father passes away. At some point, I'm sure he just looked in the mirror and said, good grief, this is everything's up against me.
Yeah. And I feel like they tried to take a few shortcuts, or as far as maybe getting a couple players in, and those guys didn't work out. And
yep.
And I'll tell you one thing I've learned covering the Big Ten now, for this is the 12th season for Nebraska. You can't take shortcuts on the lines in this league.
Oh, did you say the lines?
The lines.
No. I mean, you think about it, the offensive lines at Wisconsin and Minnesota and Ohio State, and good grief, they're all like 28 years old. They got they go home to their families. They don't go to the bars. I mean, it's incredible watching them play. It reminds me of Nebraska when I was there. They were 5th-year seniors. They knew the game backwards and forwards on both sides of the ball.
What do you think? I mean, if you were giving advice to Trev Alberts, like, what does the next coach at Nebraska have to have? And it could be Mickey Joseph, but like, what when you look at this thing right now, what do you think are the number one traits this next coach at Nebraska will need to have?
I think you've got to go with someone that has proven long-term winning executive experience, not from essentially, oh, I developed 4 quarterbacks that start in the NFL. Oh, I ran the number 1 defense for 4 years at Oklahoma. I think it has to be someone that knows how to put together a team of people, knows how to oversee them, knows how to recruit. I mean, Urban Meyer's he's a sexy pick because he's done it and he's won everywhere he wins. But do you think he wants to engage in the portal process, in the NIL process? I mean, he might be really good at the NIL, but I think it's a different game even than it was 3 years ago.
Yeah, and this is not a quick rebuild. So whoever takes it is going to have to understand. And so will Nebraska fans, obviously, Kyle. You talk about this. When you're talking about offensive and defensive lines, in order to dominate in the trenches, that's got to be a 2 and 3 and 4 year development. It's not an 18-year-old kid. It's a kid that gets there, who gets in the nutritional program, gets in the weightlifting program. By year 3, maybe ready to go. That takes a lot of time.
It does. And I mean, I still think Nebraska honestly is a better job today than it was even when we hired Coach Frost. I think it's a better job. We're putting $170 million new facility up. We've proven we can play the NIL game. We've proven we can play the portal game. I think the roster honestly is better today than what it was when Coach Frost came in. So I think it's a better job today than it was when we got the coach of the year back then. Do I think Lance Leopold's your guy? I like Lance, and he's won everywhere it's been, but the Big 12 is different than the Big 10. I mean, that's plain and simple. It's a totally different game.
Would you want to coach from the Big 10 that had been successful, or the SEC, a power program like that?
I think you start there. I mean, don't you think you go with your Mark Stoops, love him or hate him, your PJ Fleck. I mean, heck, even the guy up at Illinois.
Bielema.
Bielema. I mean, all of these guys know the game. And I think Nebraska's good. We're in the Big 10 West. You take a guy like Mark Stoops, he's going to look at that and say, so I got to be Wisconsin, Minnesota. I mean, that's a lot easier of a road.
The divisions are going to be gone, though, Kyle, I think. I don't think that's going to matter in about 2 years.
What's that?
I think they're going to get rid of the divisions.
But yeah, and that, we cut a podcast that actually drops tomorrow about what we think conference realignment looks like. And you're right. I think with the Big 10 going for $1 billion, they can't be throwing Rutgers and Maryland out there. They got to turn the TVs on. So I think you're right. It's going to be good versus good every week.
Before we let you go, Kyle, I mean, think about from a player's perspective, how hard would it be as a player to lose a head coach and a coordinator in a span of 7 days, and just trying to go back to the office today for meetings and film and lifting and practice tomorrow? What would go through the mind of a kid? I mean, take yourself back to that age, and what do you think those kids are trying to process right now?
I think, when Coach Osborne left, that was hard for all of us to process, but there wasn't the portal, there wasn't the transfer deal. And so much of the locker room is developed by your position coach that they're there. I mean, you look at who's been let go, they don't have the direct touch that like your Mike Dawson or Donnie Raiola or Barrett Ruud that they have. So they're more in line with stabilizing the ship, if you will. It's hard. Don't get me wrong. I think Coach Joseph is a good leader. In his 10 days or 8 days, he's shown great leadership, and he's doing a real good job saying the right things, taking the bullets for the players. But it's really up to the position coaches to stabilize things.
Well, Kyle, we appreciate you taking a few minutes on, and once again, check out the Beyond the Turf podcast we got on the screen for you. It's a great listen. Kyle, you guys drop one a week or one about every 10 days?
Yeah, we drop them every other Tuesday. So we've got it is actually our conference realignment episode this week. And then in 2 weeks, we did a great interview with Coach Erstad. Right now we've got a great episode with me and John Rutherford being edited, of talking about the Rose Bowl and the going against the 0-1 Miami team. There's some great funny stories on that. So we're having a blast with it. Thanks for having us on. We appreciate it.
Hey, thanks.
You will, Kyle.
All right, go Big Red.
Thank you, Kyle. Kollmorgen, former offensive lineman. You saw there the podcast. I see Sip is in here now. He finally figured out the computer. He's going to join us right now, so we're good to go. I say that. I tease. I don't know. Steve Sipple, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
We got you, buddy. We got you.
All right.
It's been a busy time. Good to have you on board again. Good to talk to you again. You've been so Sean tells us all that you made a few phone calls today. Let's go right to it. Let's find out what
do you got coming, Sip, on 3 tomorrow?
We talked to Barry Alvarez. We talked to Barry Alvarez about Bill Bush and Bill Bush taking over Nebraska's defense. Bill coached at Wisconsin a couple times, actually. He was a GA under Barry Alvarez, kind of back in the day in the early 90s. And then Bill coached under Dave Aranda when Barry was the AD there in 2014, which was, by the way, it was a very, I mean, Bill always talks about that year because we don't remember it probably. A lot of people don't remember it, but Wisconsin, Wisconsin will finish 11-3, 7-1 in the Big Ten, and played Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game. Lost 59-0. But that was Wisconsin's defense was number one in the nation much of that year, and Bill coached safeties, dimes, nickels, and outside linebackers. Had 40 guys in his meeting room for the top-ranked defense in the country. So Bill has a lot of experience. He's been a defensive coordinator at Rutgers and Utah State. In addition, just a lot of other experience. He's 56 years old. So Bill is a good. I think he makes sense. But listen, guys, he inherited a colossal mess, and I don't know how he's going to manage it. But Barry said one good way to do it is Bill does have a unique way of relating to players, and that's his strength. And Alvarez emphasizes the importance of that right now. Rallying those guys is really critical right now because a lot of guys' heads are spinning.
And Steve, you also talked to Kyle Whittingham, and I know that's going to come later in the week. Any nuggets you can share on that conversation?
No, because I haven't talked to him yet.
Oh, that's coming tomorrow. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm talking to Kyle tomorrow. Now, Bill coached Whittingham was at Utah as a defensive coordinator when Bill was there, and Bill learned a lot from Whittingham. Whittingham's a defensive coach now. He's a 62-year-old head coach now, but back then he was a defensive coordinator at Utah. And Bill was coaching safeties. So, I mean, Bill's been in a lot of different situations, a lot of different places. I mean, so he's got a lot of experience. He won't, he's not going to get rattled by anything. But come on, I mean, I don't want to make this sound like it's a pleasant situation. He's walking into a mess, and we'll see what happens. Now, he made sense. He was really the only choice that Mickey, the only logical choice that Mickey could go to as a defensive coordinator to replace Chenander, because really Mike Dawson had some experience as a defensive coordinator, 2004, 2005 at New Hampshire in another life. Bill had all the experience, but Bill would make it pretty clear to you, I think, that this is not normal going from special teams coordinator to defensive coordinator. It's not a normal situation. It's odd. So we'll see how it works.
Hey, guys, quick question for both of you. I didn't get a chance to ask at the top, and I'm just kind of curious. Did you guys know there on the ground that Chenander was in trouble, was on the cusp of being fired?
It felt that way. But they went to the other game. I mean, maybe in his mind, Mickey Joseph already knew he was going to do it. But it would have been too much in 1 week to lose your D coordinator and your head coach and put in a scheme to play Oklahoma. As we learned, it didn't really matter one way or the other.
Right.
But they had a bye week now. So I think this made more sense because it is a pretty drastic change to go to a new coordinator on defense when he hasn't been a defensive coach all season. And Sip, you might have something to add to that.
Well, you go into Bill. Well, here's the thing. No, the good news is, and there's not a lot of it, but there's some. Bill, as you guys know, worked with the special teams, so he's familiar with all the players. In fact, I need to add that to my column. Barry mentioned that as the special teams coach, Bill directly touches a lot of those defensive players. So those relationships are critical, and that definitely helps. As far as Chenander goes, those guys, those Frost originals, which you call the staff that Frost hired, they knew they were in trouble. And Eric, I'm sure, knew he was in trouble. And now, did he know for sure what was going to happen? I don't think he did when he woke up Sunday morning. And Sean, as we were calling people, and at noon, I wasn't sure at noon yesterday that any move was going to be made. But it wasn't made too much after noon, right? It was made about 1 o'clock. So, no, I don't know. It's hard to tell how it all went down.
What do you think they can really fix? If they're struggling tackling,
just about to say,
if they're struggling rushing the passer, if they're not really getting a push up front, how can you address those things. It doesn't seem like it's just a schematical issue right now.
No, there's things that can change. There are definitely things they can change, Sean. But here's the trick in the issue, and this is sort of odd. It's a bit of an oddity. I think you guys would agree. When a defense doesn't stop either the run or the pass, usually even a bad defense is okay against one of those. Nebraska's really pretty bad against both the run and the pass. So obviously Bill and that staff really has its hands full. That's sort of an oddity. Usually it's not bad. It's not, Nebraska's ranked super low nationally against both the run and pass. That usually doesn't happen that way. So Sean, very limited. They're going to look at personnel. I was hearing today, I think you could see a different nickel. Her and Kane Williams might be working at nickel now. In this kind of new staff configuration, you'll see I think you could see some personnel shuffling, but I don't know.
Kane
how much
Williams at nickel, and we haven't seen Kane Williams on the field once all year, if I'm not mistaken, right?
I don't think so. Maybe in a mop-up duty, I think he got in there earlier in the season, but not much, Sean.
And that's a Mickey Joseph guy. I mean, Mickey Joseph was influential in him coming here, so that the move would make some sense because Mickey, he's from the hometown of Mickey Joseph.
Yeah, that's just something I'm hearing. I would just watch that. But Sean, I think they have to consider a lot. I do. I mean, you're not going to get the same result if you keep doing the same thing. So I wouldn't be surprised if they consider some guys that we would consider surprising.
Before we let you go, how concerned are you with the A.J. Allen collarbone injury? It feels like we may have seen the last of him at least this year. It's hard to say until we hear from Mickey on Tuesday, but that's a big blow for the offense.
Well, isn't that interesting how A.J. Allen clearly is pressing Anthony Grant in practice? He has to be because they're using him in critical times, key moments of the game. And you see what I see, Sean. I mean, it didn't look like there was a big difference between the two. So that's a big injury. Now, we're hearing collarbone, and fortunately, he did it and can have a redshirt season. But yeah, that kid's a good play. He's a really good running back. That's one of the few bright spots for Nebraska.
And Sip, what worries me is he put enough tape out over 4 games. You better believe his DMs on Twitter are starting to get a few messages.
Yeah, and people don't. I know. Sean, I made the mistake of tweeting that sentiment out during the game, and boy, people hammered me like, "Why would you tweet this?" And I didn't respond, but my thought was, there's a certain reality. In this day and age in college football. Come on, Sean. Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, the best programs in America can see that kid on their roster. I mean, he's that
reality.
Good.
It's not fun. It's just reality.
Right. And nobody wants to hear it. And sometimes I think some of the people that react negatively just don't quite understand that's the world we're in. And it's happening. I mean, teams recruit off other teams' rosters. And yeah, that kid, look, I mean, it's tumultuous here. Some coaches will try to seize on that, especially when you're talking about the very best players on the roster.
Yeah, he would be a 4-for-4 transfer with 4 very good games of tape already available to watch.
Yeah. I don't want to depress the fans, Sean.
No.
I was going to say, Sean, can you stop? Sean, stop.
Well, I will see you tomorrow at the press conference, and we're going to see our next guest, Andy Kendeigh. So on your way out, say hello to Andy Kendeigh as you say goodbye here, Sip.
Andy, we'll see you tomorrow, and it'll be hey, what time is that thing, Sean?
11:30.
All right. See you guys there. See you there.
All right, Sip. We'll see you then.
God bless you all.
Yep.
Take care.
Well, let's
Andy Kendeigh is here. There he is. Yeah.
We got Andy Kendeigh from Channel 7, Jeff. You guys have not formally met, Jeff, but Jeff Cameron, meet Andy Kendeigh.
Nice to meet you,
Jeff,
Andy.
nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, sir. Thanks for joining us.
Anytime. I actually had to shower, so this is a good thing. It's a good step.
Well, Andy, it's been a week, and that would be an understatement. I mean, you've been around now almost 15 years in this market, and you've followed things closely because your wife's a graduate from here as well. You understand things. What has this last week been like, just from your perspective?
It's been sad from an outsider point of view. Just sad to see how this thing just didn't work. I understand the disappointment from Husker fans. It's just, if you would have told us 5 years ago that this was headed this way, I would have never believed you. I was down in Orlando for Scott Frost, the championship game, the conference championship game. And there was such a feeling even down there of excitement. You could just feel it, like this was happening. And Scott Frost was ready to bring his brand of football from Central Florida up to Nebraska. And for whatever reason, it just never worked. It started off weird, off kilter, and it never gained its footing, whether it be losing your first 6 games or, in that year 2 when it really looked like you were ready to turn the corner, losing a couple of close games. And then these last 2+ years has just been a head scratcher. Obviously, the COVID year was a tough deal for everybody. But last year, you just had a feeling this wasn't going to turn around. And then you got some new life with all these transfers and new coaches, and you say, well, hey, maybe this is going to be different. And then we go to Dublin, Ireland, and we see the exact same result that we've seen time and time again. So the one common denominator was the head coach, and that's why I think we're here today. So I just think it's just, it's a pretty low time there at the program. And but that being said, this is a huge hire for Trev Alberts, and we'll see where it goes.
Andy, was there a moment, like we were in Ireland, and at that game, we sat by each other in that outdoor press box, and I could see it in your eyes. You kind of felt this thing unraveling, even in that Aviva Stadium at that game, with just some of the decision-making, how the game was managed. It just didn't have a very good feel in Dublin, Ireland that day.
It didn't, Sean. And I remember, first of all, that setup was unbelievable. That could be a whole other story we do an hour on, because that was unbelievable, the whole setup of the game in Dublin, Ireland. But I had issues with right before half. And when he called timeout, basically daring Pat Fitzgerald to make his move. And Pat Fitzgerald says, 4th and 1 at my own 38, 39, we're going to go for it. And sure enough, they went for it and gave him extra time. The extra time allowed him to score a touchdown and take the lead. And I said then, that's not how you coach to win football games. I understand the reason behind it, because he wanted to be aggressive, and that showed even more clearly when he went with the onside kick in the second half. But man, I've seen time and time again that backfiring, even the next week against North Dakota, right before half. I thought, the extra timeouts gave North Dakota time to extend that drive. And it's just the little things like that. Was it the only reason? Of course not. Was the onside kick the only reason? No, of course not. But it was if you start piling on the little things, they amount to a big pile of no-nos, and that's what I think got him fired.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I had a chance, Sean and Andy, I'm here in Florida, and he was the talk, Scott Frost was, of the college football world, obviously, after those 2 seasons at UCF. And I'll just say, from an outsider's perspective, everybody I know who covers college football and loves college football, no matter whom they root for, every conversation we had was that was a no-brainer hire. Scott Frost was going to be the guy to get this turned around. And Andy, you mentioned it. Starting slowly, having some bad breaks, losing some close games, then COVID, all that stuff happens. One thing we've seen, guys, for coaches that have been successful at new ventures, they have some success within their first 2.5 years. And if they don't, and again, I keep bringing this point up, you can look around the country, there are very few guys who are these days given a 3rd or 4th or 5th year to still get it turned around because of recruiting. It's very difficult now to, if you don't have an initial rush of great players come in and you can infuse this roster and raise the floor, a lot of times you never get it back on track. It felt like getting off to that poor start and losing some really close games, it got desperate quick.
It was literally like slippery footing, because that first game, if they have that first game, who knows? I mean, who knows? We may not be here, but nobody knows what would have happened if they played that game against Akron, if the weather holds up or whatever. Instead, terrible weather, the game gets canceled. And then they bring in Colorado team next week. Remember, Adrian gets hurt that game, and then it all starts going sideways there from there. Even to the point where, Jeff, in that game against Northwestern, I go back in Evanston, they had Northwestern pinned. The game was basically over and allowed Northwestern to drive the length of the field to tie the game, including a 2-point conversion, if I'm not mistaken, to send the game to overtime, in which Northwestern won in overtime. After that game, I remember asking Scott, hey, does your team need to learn how to win? And he said, absolutely, they need to learn how to win. And I don't think they ever did under Scott, because they were never able to turn the corner. Now, moving forward, how does this train get back on the tracks? That's the great question here with 8 games remaining, because you've got some quote unquote, and I hate to say this phrase because it didn't work out well when Scott said it, but winnable games coming up. And we'll see what happens in the immediate future with Indiana coming to town and then a roadie at Rutgers, followed by a road trip at Purdue.
Andy, you've known Trev Alberts for a long time, both as his days at the University of Nebraska, Omaha, and now Nebraska. What type of job does he have ahead of him right now? Because Bill Moose, at least when he made the Scott Frost hire and the Hoiberg's hires, I mean, he hit the home run. He got the guy both people wanted. He even got Will Bolt. And obviously they haven't worked out in their own ways. I mean, Bolt had his one good year, but last year they struggled. But when you look at this hire, how hard is it going to be for Trev Alberts to get the home run hire? And should he not worry about that?
Well, I think he's worried about it, obviously, but I do think it's not the slam dunk no brainer. I mean, Sean, me and you and Jeff could have hired Scott Frost and get him to Lincoln and sell him on the fact of coming back home and getting that hire done. And the Fred Hoiberg thing, tip of the cap to build it, to make it happen. But those were pretty obvious choices in terms of who you're going to go after. Now, I was reading the World Herald yesterday. They had a list of 21 candidates, and you could probably make a case for 21. There are candidates out there. Now you've got to kind of shrink the field, gauge the interest, see who wants to come, and then see who fits your criteria. Because I do think that Trev has a laundry list of checkpoints that you have to check boxes, and if you want to be a part of this program moving forward. And, I think he's going to have to get a high character in Nebraska, not necessarily a Nebraska guy with ties to Nebraska, but a guy that Nebraskans can get behind. And I think that's important, because all along you can say, yeah, the wins and losses are important, but it's how you win and how you lose. And if it doesn't look right in the losses, that's just not going to cut it moving forward. So Trev's got a real difficult job moving forward in terms of who he's going to hire. And this will, he was asked at his news conference about, do you think about this defining your tenure? And he kind of shrugged it off, and he didn't really give you an answer. Trev Alberts didn't, because it was kind of a broad brush question. But truly, this hire will define his tenure at the University of Nebraska. And the good thing, though, guys, is obviously they're the first of the party. They've got a real long runway. And we'll see what happens.
You got to have somebody who I think absolutely can tap into the cachet of Nebraska football and this fan base, which is amongst the best, if not the best, in all of college football. I mean, you've seen traditional programs, great powers throughout the history of college football that fall on their face, that have not sustained that greatness. And for whatever reason, confluence of events lead to those programs having a tough time. And a guy comes in, and it's the right guy, and taps into that cachet, has a little success early, understands and appreciates that tradition, but doesn't solely fall back on it, has his own vision as well, marries the two, and all of a sudden you see it come back around quickly. I also think Sean brought it up earlier, guys. I mean, I know a lot of people are going to bring up Lance Leopold. Understandably, he's won at every level. And if you can win at Kansas, well, hell, you can win anywhere.
Right.
So somebody who's shown you can win in places where it required a big build. And Nebraska obviously is an elite place to coach college football, but it's still right now a big turnaround, a big build. Somebody who's got the juice, that's done it before somewhere else without the tradition, I think is a very interesting candidate.
But somebody who also can handle the fishbowl that is Nebraska,
Yeah.
and be a guy that Nebraskans can get behind. I mean, you don't have to be a carnival barker at Nebraska. You've got fans that showed up 385 straight games. And so you have that built-in fan base, but we're at a real critical point here in terms of where fans are going to spend their Saturdays. I mean, just look at the stands in the second half. I mean, Sean and I kind of elbowed each other, like, look at the empty pockets. We haven't seen that since the end of the Mike Riley era. You know, the student section was a fourth full. 3/4 had left after halftime. And I got to say, my daughter's one of them. She left at halftime. She's like, Dad, I didn't want to stick around and waste half my Saturday doing that. I go, hey, no, I understand that. So you got to get a guy who is invested in the product, who Nebraskans can get behind, and who is in for the long haul and will make your program proud. Like, make Nebraskans proud that he is your head coach. And more often than not, there's been some missteps and whatever, whether it be performance on the field or whatnot, where guys were just Nebraskans couldn't get behind the head coach. And I think moving forward, a couple wins would help, and putting a consistent product of a team that doesn't make silly mistakes, I think that would really help.
Andy, thanks for joining us tonight. It's a pleasure to get to meet you, sir. And I know you and Sean obviously know each other exceptionally well, but great to talk to you. We'll do it again down the line, and have a good night.
Yeah, you too. Thanks for having me, Jeff. Thanks, Sean. We'll talk soon.
We'll see you tomorrow, Andy. Thank you.
Yep, see you tomorrow. Thanks, bro.
Andy Kendeigh, KETV, ABC Omaha, Sean's cohort there. And Sean, I guess we'll wrap on this. We want to thank everybody out there who's watching the show, who's in the chat, participating as well. Just a reminder to all of you guys, if you haven't signed up, you should now. It's $10. It's for the whole year, Husker Online. They're going to document every day of this thing, this turnaround, this search for the right guy, all of it, everything that's happening with Nebraska football, and you can get it for just $10. I would do so now. These guys are the best in the business. Husker Online, Sean Callahan. Every Monday, we do this show together. Buddy, I'm going to make a prediction that the next show we do together will not be after somebody else got fired. That's it. I'm 2 for 2 with these shows with you where somebody's getting fired.
Hey, yeah, it's been interesting, that's for sure. But yeah, no game this weekend. We have a bye weekend, so
there you go.
I might go to Kansas City with my family or do something to breathe.
Go get away.
My wife, as you saw, my wife was in the swim lot parking lot with Kollmorgen, and I'm doing a show. So it's been a busy 2 weeks, but you know, we've never seen something like this, and hopefully they get it figured out. But we've got a lot of season left. That's what's crazy about this, Jeff. We have 10 weeks, 8 games.
A lot to document along the way. So our thanks to Kyle Kollmorgen, as you mentioned before, and Sip, as always, and Andy Kendeigh, and Sean, I thank you. And to all the people watching, again, thank you guys so much. Don't forget, $10, 1 year, Husker Online. You're going to want to do it, part of the On3 network. Until next week, be well, everybody. Deep breaths, the bye week. Go enjoy some things outside of Nebraska football, right? Just for a moment, kind of recalibrate and come on back in here. Sean, have a good night, buddy. Be well. And our thanks to Trey, who produced tonight.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Trey.